Hey there, it's Andrea. Today, we learn that Earth food is bland AF. The Klingon High Council is as corrupt as any governing body today, and we ask the question, how badass is Khalest? Come nerd out with us.
Welcome to the TNG Podcast, the number one place in the Alpha Quadrant to geek out about all things Star Trek: The Next Generation. I'm your co-host, Shereese.
I'm your co-host, Andrea. Today we're talking Season 3, Episode 17, Sins of the Father. This episode was written by Burton Armus, whose namesake we may remember from that horrible shit episode when Tasha dies.
The Skin of Evil.
Yeah, thank you. And directed by Rob Bowman. It is Stardate 43685.2. As part of the Federation Klingon Officer Exchange Program, Klingon Commander Kern has requested to be placed aboard the Enterprise's first officer. His typical Klingon command style aggravates the crew, particularly Lieutenant Worf. Worf confronts Kern alone, where Kern reveals that he is Worf's younger brother.
Bum, bum, bum.
Yeah. Yes.
So, Andrea,
Shereese, thoughts?
Yeah. So, Andrea, I know, Andrea, that you are not a fan of Klingon episodes in general.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to say, I love all the Worf backstory episodes so much. And this one especially because similar to something I said way back in season 1, there are not that many story arcs in TNG.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty episodic. Each episode pretty much stands alone. Whatever aliens you meet in this episode, you will never see again. There will be no closure beyond the ending credits. But what I love about this particular episode is that it sets up the next kind of set of episodes with Worf with this whole Kittimer situation.
Yes. Yeah.
And those two episodes are two of my favorite Worf backstory episodes, like, of all time. Like, I love those two episodes that go deeper into what's going on at Kittimer. So this one sets that up. And so that makes this like my second favorite Worf episode. So I'm super excited to dig into this today.
You know, I love that you said that. And I agree with you. I normally do not love the Klingon episodes because I think Klingons as a race are kind of stupid. They're just very violent and live for honor. And like, that's cool. You know, that's like, you've got your like honor code, but
yeah, I think all the races are portrayed very
very single-mindedly. Yeah. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed. Where it's like the Vulcans are like, we only do logic. Like,
right.
Okay,
or like the Ferengi or something where you're like, okay.
Yeah.
They're not given a lot of depth, but something like
they are not. And that's why I've never loved the Klingon episodes. I don't love like all the, like, let's just be warriors and roam the galaxy and be warriors and die warriors. That's like, I get it, buddy. But I will say any episode that shows like deeper backstory and growth in a character, especially some of the like senior characters, I'm there for. Mm-hmm. So don't love the Klingons as a general principle, but I did love this episode because it's not a Klingon episode. It's a Worf family episode.
Yes.
Yeah. And
I wish we had more of these. Like, I was thinking about this and, you know, my constant irritation that Troy is written as like a piece of toast. And a sexy piece of toast. But I just think like, you know, we don't have a lot of backstory episodes about lots of our main crew. We just don't. And like Worf's is so good. And I'm like, well, I want to hear about Troy's backstory. What's her home planet like? You know, what was it like growing
Wouldn't
up?
it be so nice?
It would be lovely. It would be lovely. And then we could have Lwaxana in maybe a different light. We would see her as like a mom back in the day. Or I don't know, something that would make us not despise her so much, maybe. I don't know. Or like make things make more sense. Like just stuff like that. And I think about like, you know, we even went to Data's past to see what happened with the crystalline entity, and he didn't even have a past, and we got his backstory.
They just found him on a plinth
when he was born. Yeah, on his plinth. So I was just thinking, like, and Geordi too. Like, we never get a good backstory on Geordi.
No, we get nothing. We meet Geordi's parents? ? In like season 7. We know and don't love Lwaxana Troi. And we do, we
get some family stuff.
Yeah, we do get some family stuff about the sister.
Backstory.
Yeah, no, it's not quite a backstory. So this actually is really great episode. Also, I got to say, because I've always avoided watching the Klingon episodes and there's just such a bounty of like other wonderful episodes to watch, I've never missed them. This episode was completely new to me. Completely new.
That's awesome.
I got to have one of those beautiful rarities where you have a favorite show and a new episode. And it's not like a reboot that's like disappointing because all the characters have aged like 45 years or whatever. Like it was in the time. Like this was so amazing. I was like, Andrea, where the hell have you been, girl? Like it was, I loved it.
This is that bonus $5 bill in your pants when you pull them out the dryer.
Yes.
So I'm going to be curious to hear how you reacted throughout this episode.
Oof, okay.
Because I wonder if in the beginning you were like, oh gosh, not another officer exchange program, because we know that first time it didn't work out so well. Right. Yeah. For the Enterprise. It took a turn.
It was a nice callback to season 2, episode 8's A Matter of Honor, which is when Riker was in the officer exchange program and went on board the Pach. That was kind of cool. They're like, remember that thing? We're bringing it back out again. Now we're getting a Klingon. I was like, oh, okay. All right, let's open this up. So we have this officer exchange program. Number 1 is going to be stepping down. Number 1 now becomes number 2. And Commander Kurn is going to come aboard and serve as the first officer for XYZ amount of time. They don't specify. And he comes aboard and immediately asks to report for duty.
And relieves Riker, which I thought was such a boss move. It's like, here's your first officer. He's like, great, you're relieved. Okay, let's get to work.
Seriously, what a power move. Riker knew he was dismissed for this time. He agreed to the officer exchange program. Like,
and he was the one, he was the one cheering it on. But it was like,
great, a Klingon. And he's like, let me stuff you into your little box and goodbye. I was like, wow, okay. So this guy comes aboard just swinging it everywhere. Like everybody had to know who he was. So we cut to the bridge and he does that power move that I think on any other ship would look cool, but aboard the Enterprise, you're like, what are you doing? He steps all the way up to the view screen and like lays down the law. He's like, you will address me as sir or this, that, and the other. I expect the absolute best of you. And the Enterprise crew is like, crickets, because they already do give their best. Like they don't know
but I also think they were actually not just like, I don't know. I don't think their reaction was just like, whatever, we already do this. I think their reaction was like, oh crap, this guy is going to be tough. And, to which point Wesley whispers over to Data, probably being like, uh-oh, I don't know what to expect from this.
Bad move, Wesley.
Yeah, bad move. Because Kurn doesn't put up with that crap. And he's like, you guys will ship up or
shape up or ship out. Yeah.
I got that from Arrested Development. What did he say? He said ship up or shape up or something like that. What did he say?
Shape up or ship out, I imagine. Okay. Well, I felt like watching Wesley get chastised for talking is very Harry Potter when Severus Snape like yells at Harry Potter for like asking his neighbor for like some parchment and quill. It's like, this isn't the time, dude. Not now. Like you get the mean teacher in. Like this is bad.
And something I was really excited about with Kurn is that Kurn is played by a Black actor. And while Klingons are not Black people, they do have brown skin, similar to the Ferengi. Ferengi are just brown aliens. They just happen to be brown. But I just appreciate when they have brown actors or brown extras come in to be the brown aliens. Like it just makes sense to me. It's less makeup work. And also for me, I feel like there's not enough diversity in Hollywood. So when or at least on this show, for sure, I don't see enough diversity in their crew, in their extras, and the people they bring on as cameo guest stars. And so when I saw that Kurn was played by a Black actor, I was so excited because I was like, yes, like let's infuse in some diversity. I was really excited. And not just any extra, by the way. This actor's named Tony Todd, and he was super duper famous in the 90s. One of his main roles was around the time that he did this episode, which was as a character called Candyman. And he did a series of horror films called Candyman. And Candyman's kind of like a fairy tale, but like the evil kind, where like you go into your bedroom or you go into the bathroom and you say Candyman 3 times and he shows up and like kills everybody. It's one of those type of things. And so he did a whole series of these terrifying movies.
Meanwhile, the milkman's like, God damn it. Now what am I supposed to do?
Nothing to do with his time. So I was just so excited to see this actor particularly playing Kurn. And I just think he did a fabulous job. He was the most Klingon of Klingons. Like at no point was I just like, wow, this actor's just not hitting the marks. I was like, I bought it. I bought all of it.
That was actually going to be one of my sort of final thoughts among many, but he is such a convincing Klingon. He exudes that like Klingon warrior spirit with his facial expressions and everything without looking like the fucking Duras sisters that are just like, like hissing for every other word. And you're like, okay, girls, put the boobs away and take it down like 4 notches.
But
like
their boobs do look really good though. I'm just saying. If you're going to show them. For
me, it was nice. Like, it felt like the 90s version of boob, which was just like beach balls stuffed into a way too small, like top, but whatever. I'm not here to boob shame any woman, I guess. But yeah, like he was subtly so Klingon in his spirit and I loved it. But yeah, so Wesley gets kind of snapped at and I guess rightfully so, like, yo, you're on the bridge of the Enterprise, like get to your duties. Okay. I noticed that he's wearing a weapon as well. Like as he's walking around the bridge, he's got a holster with a weapon in it. And I was like, that's weird. Like I would think they'd have him like put it away or leave it aboard his other ship. And then Riker takes his seat in Troy's seat. And I'm like, where's Troy? What happened to Troy?
We don't know. Yet again, we don't know what's going on with her.
I'm a little bit outraged. You're still not. You're like, who cares?
She still doesn't have enough function on the ship for us to be like, oh my gosh. And first of all, like we've mentioned before how Troy there's this unique opportunity in the character of Troy to really highlight the importance of mental health. And if anybody needs it, the crew of the flagship definitely need it because they go through some crazy stuff. But at this early stage of the show, we don't yet see people going to Troy often with their issues. We're going to see it coming up in just a couple episodes here, but we don't see people going to Troy with their issues, which really should be happening. And she should be in her counseling office, just like Beverly Crusher should kind of be in the sick bay most of the time. Whenever we see her on the bridge, we're like, girl, what are you doing? Like, aren't there people you need to be, it's always some like crisis. And then Beverly's there and you're like, no, it's a crisis. You need to be at your station. So yeah, like at this point, we still haven't figured out what she's doing on the ship, but maybe we can imagine that she's doing her job. And that's why she's not sitting on the bridge because she's meeting with messed up Starfleet people who need her help.
Yeah, maybe. Well, as we know, she does become much more functional and her role becomes better defined and more fleshed out as time goes on. I guess we're just not fully there yet. Okay. We cut to 10 forward and Wesley is sitting there kind of griping to Riker because Kern is like on his ass about everything. And I feel like that's such a normal sort of feeling to be like, wow, this new supervisor came in and I feel like they just don't like me. Like no matter what I do, like they just don't like me. And it's like, okay, maybe it's a Wesley thing, but then Geordi comes in and says like the same thing, right? And it's like, Kern is on our ass for everything. We're going to have to.
And Geordi's very huffy about it.
He wrote in on his huffy to come and complain to Riker. And they're like, well, there's only one person sort of aboard the Enterprise who doesn't seem too bothered by it. And it's Worf, of course, because he's like, Klingon leadership.
Well, yeah. The issue that they have is that he's on everybody he's riding everybody really hard except for Worf. And Worf is the only one on the ship who would not mind it. And that's what Wesley starts to say, but then stops and like bites his tongue. And then Geordi finishes the thought. Like there's only one guy on the ship who would love this kind of treatment. And he's the only one getting treated really, really nicely. And then you cut to the bridge and you see Kern just being so like placating and talking to Worf like he's a baby. Yeah. And exactly what they're saying. Like he's being really hard on everybody. He's riding them really hard. And then on Worf, he's going, wow, what a good job, Worf. Did you click a sensor? Wow, that's amazing. And Worf is just like about to punch him in the mouth. Like, why are you talking to me like that? But he doesn't because
that's so funny because I didn't see him as placating. I thought he was patronizing. I felt like he was patronizing Worf.
Yeah, like, that's the word I mean. Patronizing. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Patronizing. That's the word I mean. Like, let me give you your bottle. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. He was totally patronizing Worf. He really was.
So then as he's kind of just patronizing Worf and making him just seem like a child, you start to wonder, like, what is going on here? First of all, I guess it's okay that Kern is kind of harsh because he's a Klingon. He says he's going to bring discipline and this is unusual for the crew. So that's kind of fine. But then you're like, why is he being weird around Worf specifically? And Worf always gets crap from Klingons like he always does.
Always.
But you're like, yeah, but this is like extra. Kern is doing a lot. And you're just like, what the heck is going on? So next thing you see when we're kind of going, now what's the deal with Kern and Worf, and why do Klingons always give Worf a hard time? Anyways, you see Kern in the turbo lift with Riker. Mm-hmm. And Riker's thinking he's going to come in and save the day because the crew has been complaining to him, which, by the way, is a little bit uncool, but understandable. Like, they need somebody to vent to. And again, this is where Counselor Troi would come in super handy.
This is where she should have been. Yeah.
But in any case, so he's thinking he's going to give a helpful suggestion to Kern by saying, hey, basically the crew is feeling like you're riding them a little bit hard. Can you ease up? Is what he's trying to kind of get at. But he comes at it from a different perspective and is just like, would you mind taking a suggestion? You know, I've been on a Klingon ship. I had things that I had to learn. You're now on a Federation ship. Maybe there are things you could learn. Is it okay to give a suggestion? And Kern looks at him and he's just like, no, it's not okay, and walks away. And Riker's just like, how dare you walk away from me, and starts yelling. And I was like, have you lost your mind, Riker? Like, he went from this diplomatic person to just like,
you've lost the sense of the appropriate over here, Riker. We get stern Riker, and he's like, this isn't a Klingon ship. And Kern's like, no, it is not. If it would have been, I would have killed you for the offer, and like walks off. And in that point, I was like, yeah, Riker, you really should have taken a different tact. This was your bad, Riker. This is not actually even Kern's bad. Like, this was Riker, like, let me help you. No, thank you. Fuck you. It's like, wow.
Yep, totally.
What are you doing, dude?
Totally. And also, like, if Kern's going to be the first officer, let Kern be the first officer. Let him do it his way anyways. Yeah. You know, Riker is trying to help.
Ambo Jitsu or something. Like, go.
Seriously, because I don't even think...
Take some saxophone lessons. Something.
Yeah, I don't know if Riker becomes the second officer or if he's just like off duty. Like he said he was relieved. So I think he's just relieved of duty until Kern's done. So yeah, he could totally be in the holodeck right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Go pull up the minuet file and try to tweak that correctly. Gosh. Whatever. Right. Like, I love, though, as they're on their way, we realize that they're both on their way to this small reception that the captain has hosted in Kern's honor. And the senior staff are there. And can we talk about this scene for a few minutes? Because this is one of the best, like, written comedy scenes aboard Star Trek that I've ever seen. Kern looks at this roast chicken and says, your dead bird appears to have been sitting in the sun for too long. Like, how long has this bird been dead? And they're like, no, we have replicators and we like replicated it this way. And he's like, ugh. Right?
Yeah. And they said like, and we'll remind you that we eat most of our meat cooked, which is they don't do as Klingons.
Yes.
So he's just like,
yes.
Like how we would do if we saw a bunch of raw meat, right? We'd be like, yep, I'm not hungry.
Okay. See, I am a huge fan of sushi. I really love it.
Which is not the same as raw chicken.
It is not the same, but it is raw fish. And I didn't get into trying sushi until I was in like my late teens or early 20s. And then I was like, this is magical. I love it. I love it so much. Right? It's one of my favorite things. But when I was a kid, I asked what sushi was and my parents were like raw fish. And I was like, no, that sounds awful. And now I'm like, sushi, yay.
Right. But, and I will point out, but only sushi, right? So like raw chicken, raw pork, raw beef, any of that stuff.
I have had raw beef before as like steak tartare in really, really high-end restaurants. And like, this is actually really good. But yeah, if you just handed me some raw chicken, I'd be like, nah. But here's the thing that cracks me up is Beverly offers Kern some caviar. And he's like, what is it? And Data's like, it is the eggs of a blah, blah, blah. And of course, Picard's like, not now. This is not the time to be explaining what caviar is. So Kern takes like a handful with his bare hands because, Klingons don't use utensils.
Right.
And smells it. Is like, oh, and then just wipes the caviar on the chicken with his bare hands. And I thought, this is so great. And when he finally sits
and Beverly's
down,
sitting there with a tray of crackers like, well, I guess
I guess you
won't be needing these
down then. It's fine. We don't all use. It's okay.
Maybe they should have demonstrated the proper way to get caviar. I don't know.
Well, I think they should have demonstrated a bunch of things because we see them sit down and start eating, and they're out. They're trying to be really polite and they're asking Kern some questions, and he is not having that roast chicken. And did you notice he grabs a rose and just starts tearing the petals apart and popping it in his mouth because he thought that was part of the meal as well.
I did not notice that. I did not notice that.
Well, because they had this beautiful floral arrangement. And so if you're an alien, you're like, I don't know which one is the food and what's the decoration. So he just took a little bit of everything and he just starts ripping apart a red rose and eating the petals. And I was like,
I have to admire both Kern and Riker because they both jumped into this alien food like, let's just do it. Let's just, whatever's on the table, I'm just going to pop it in my mouth, which is really impressive.
Yes. And did you notice Worf is just as displeased with the chicken? He's eating it like, He's not liking it. And we did see the return of what we suspect are like the futuristic IKEA forks that Guinan used to stab Q with. It's the same forks. I was like, hey, they're back.
Yay for future forks.
Yes. Okay. I also need to talk about what are they eating? I looked at the plate. I did some review. What the fuck were they eating? Okay, rotisserie chicken, plain boiled potatoes, steamed broccoli, chunky coleslaw, and caviar. What is this?
It was Picard's favorite foods. I think that's what was going on.
The plain boiled potatoes?
The caviar he did say was a delicacy that he personally loved. It was one of his favorite foods. So I don't know what the rest was. I don't know what its function was. Maybe they were trying to give him a taste potatoes of America.
No. Okay. So my dad, who's since passed, was from Europe, and they would eat plain boiled potatoes all the time. So we would eat plain boiled potatoes as kids, like instead of like rice, you get potatoes, and oftentimes they were just boiled and like cut, and they were just so like, blech. I gotta tell you. Now I'm a mashed potato, like twice baked potato, like with all the toppings, but just plain boiled potatoes, some plain steamed broccoli and chunky coleslaw. I'm good. I'd rather eat the rose. I wrote, fire that caterer.
Which is also the replicator. Yes. Yeah. Which actually makes sense because a little bit later on, Kern does say the food is very bland. And now that you're telling us what exactly is on the plate, I thought he just
bland AF.
I thought he just meant bland, like making fun of like Earth food, but no, what you just described, yes, the rose would be much more delicious and flavorful. The rose with a little bit of caviar on top. You have some flavors going on there.
There you go.
But as they start to get into this like casual dinner conversation, and Troy's like, so Kern, tell me about how it's going, how you fit again. And he's just like, well, it's really tough. It's hard to know where the boundaries are. I mean, I almost killed Riker earlier. I had to stop myself. And Troy just laughs like, oh, that was so funny. And then he's like, yeah. So, but I didn't kill him. And it's like, oh, wait, that wasn't a joke.
Love that. Was great. The nonverbal. Okay. That moment in that scene was a study in nonverbal communication. The way that Troy looks at, Dr. Crusher, and they look back at Riker, and Riker's like, it's like, no, this really happened. And Kern was so funny. He's like, don't worry. I've never killed anyone at a dinner table. Yum, yum, yum. I was like, yep. What?
And Jordy's like, okay. Good to know, and that's when he is like, you know what? I can't even eat this food. This food is much too bland for a Klingon. And he says it right as Worf's about to put a bite of chicken into his mouth. Yeah. So Worf's just like, like he's good at pushing everyone's buttons in just the right way. Like a true little brother would, which is also kind of impressive because he's just met these people and he already knows how to push all their buttons.
Yes. That is actually really, really good thought. So this dinner wraps up and Kern is in his quarters. Everything is dark and surrounded by, you guessed it, more space paintings. Whoop, whoop. More space paintings as he's staring out the window to space.
But the painting, though, was a painting, I believe, of Saturn, which they probably couldn't see it from where they were. So
I guess I'm just so fed up with the damn space paintings. But then suddenly we get Worf comes in and he essentially does the equivalent of, why don't you like me? Mm-hmm. He's like, you dishonor me at every turn. Have I done something to offend you? And finally, as Kern is kind of pushing buttons and getting him to react, Worf basically flips out. Mm-hmm. And Kern is like, that's the response of a Klingon. The response I'd expect from my older brother. And Worf is like, what? And then it cuts to commercial. And so he clearly had no idea at all. Mm-hmm. It's like, Kern, who even are you? Is your name really Kern? Like, what's happening? And we find out that Klingon child rearing isn't really that hands-on, apparently, because Kern was less than a year old or just around a year old when Worf and his mother and father left for the Khitomer colony. And they were supposed to be gone for less than a year or right around a year. So they left Kern with Mog's friend. And when they never returned, it was assumed that they were all killed. So number one, why aren't you taking like a 1-year-old with you? And you're like, we'll be back in a year to get our kid. That Mog's got a good ass friend to be like, sure, I'll take your kid for a year. Like,
yeah. And they said, like, this was revealed later on in the episode. We don't know it at this point, though, that Mog believed that there was somebody he knew who was a traitor. And so he was going to Khitomer to try to find out who this person was and potentially expose them, which in Klingon culture means kill him. That's what he would have done. It wouldn't have been like a trial. He would have just killed him, right? So he went there to find that out. And he took, maybe the real question is, why did his wife and Worf go if that was the case?
Right. If it was so dangerous, don't take like your 8-year-old like that. If it's really that dangerous, don't be like, hey, son.
Yeah. And
saddle up, buddy.
And I think Worf himself was about 4 or 5 because he was 5 when he was adopted by his Earth parents. Yeah. So, I mean, he was pretty little also. And maybe this is just a thing when you have 2 little kids that it's like a bit too much to leave both of them. So you pick one. I don't know. But he was young enough to not remember that he had a brother, which makes sense if he was 4 or 5. If he was 5 when he was adopted. So if he's like, 4.5 and then goes through this crazy traumatic experience and he was discovered as one of the only survivors on the entire colony was this little, tiny 4-year-old. So yes, I could see him like forgetting he had a brother or a past or anything in the light of that trauma. But like, what a shock to find out you've got a brother and he came onto the ship just to see you. And now Worf is trying to piece all this together. And he's like, so you came here just to like spy on me or like what is going on? Or, yeah. What is going on?
Yes. And Kern specifically requested the Enterprise, which is now obvious because he wanted to meet Worf. And he tells Worf that the challenge is his to make. And Worf is like, what challenge? And Kern tells us that the Klingon High Council has accused their father of treason for aiding and abetting the Romulans on the attack on Khitomer. And I had a couple of thoughts here. One, why now, after like 30 years, did they decide to make this challenge? Mm-hmm. And even when we find out, and I'm jumping ahead just a little bit, but I'll dial it back. Even when we find out like later in the episode that the Klingon High Council members are like, Worf, let this go. We don't want to proceed with this. Then why suddenly accuse his father now of being a traitor, which I thought was really weird. But also I thought, man, Worf really bought this brother story like really quickly. Very fast, very fast. Yeah.
But it's understandable in their culture because they probably wouldn't make up a story like that. That's what I took it to be. It's just like, it's not, they don't have the kind of culture where people are deceitfully going around and trying to pretend to be people's siblings. Like,
I guess that's true.
It's just not a thing. It's not in their nature. Nobody would be like, let's pretend like we're really siblings. You know what I mean? So I just feel like saying that there was no reason for him to question it.
I guess you're right because this culture is completely different. And by this, I mean, the Klingon culture you're right. They wouldn't be pretending like
there's nothing
they were. But I will say for me, I'm a big student of history. And I've been reading a ton about, the fall of the the fall of the like Russian Tsar's family and like the bloodlines of the rulers. And the last Tsar at the end of World War I in 1917, he and his whole family were all assassinated and their bodies were like burned and their ashes sprinkled. So there was no trace of it. Jeez. And for decades. Yeah. And the youngest was like,
is this the Anastasia story?
Yes. For decades and decades and decades, people came out of the woodwork claiming to be Anastasia Romanoff. And so, there was one case, I believe in the 30s, that this woman became so prominent in her claim that Olga Romanoff, who was essentially like the aunt of who would be Anastasia, had to like meet with her and like suss her out and kind of see like if she really was. But Anastasia, I think no, Anastasia, they were all killed like in a basement. Yeah, they were
not
all
even Anastasia escaped. That was just like a Tupac story.
Yeah, and she was like 11 or something. I mean, it was just like so young and so awful. But so for me, coming from reading about that, which is so fascinating, and then having Kern be like, "I'm your younger brother," I'd be like, "I'm going to need to see a DNA test. I'm going to need to like run some analysis on this." Like,
so that makes sense. The story of Anastasia might have colored your perception of this episode a bit, which totally makes sense for me. I bought it immediately. I was just like, yeah, why would he lie about something like that? And really, then when he explained why he's there, where he says, you know what, our father's being accused of being a traitor, and they do explain why now, which I guess we'll get to. But he says, our father's being accused of being a traitor. Since you're the older brother, it's your job to challenge it. But I'm happy to tell people who is my real dad so I can challenge it. And Worf thinks about it, and he's like, no, I will challenge it. I want you to not tell anybody who your real dad is, just in case I lose. So that way you won't be murdered and, dishonor won't come to you and your whole line.
Yes. Well, I think too, it makes more sense that like, if you're going to claim to be the long lost relative of someone, you probably want it to be somebody successful or like famous. Yeah. But like
to be a Romanov, not like some random guy on the
Moog is
on the Enterprise.
Yeah. Moog is infamous. Like as a Klingon, you would want to distance yourself as much as possible for him. But yeah, so that makes sense. So yeah, the Klingon High Council has accused Moog of being responsible for the Romulan attack by transmitting the like security access codes to the Romulans moments before the attack. And I have this great scene where Worf goes to ask Picard to grant him leave to challenge these accusations. And Picard insists only on the grounds that he gets to go with Worf and assist him in any way that he can. And I was like, this is such good Captain Picard. Because other captains would have been like, I don't know, it's going to be kind of sketchy for you. Well, it's your life, permission granted. Hopefully you come back. Because if Worf fails, he has to bear the punishment for his father's
crimes.
Thank you. And like Worf will be put to death. So it's kind of a big deal to like challenge this.
It's crazy. And I was so glad that our laws don't work like that. I mean, imagine if we had to pay for our family's crimes, some of us would be very screwed. Like I was just like, oh man, but that does keep people. I mean, I want to say it keeps people in line, but that's not the point of it. That would be the point of it if it was a law in America. The point of it with the Klingons is all about honor. Someone's got to pay for this.
And bloodlines,
Yeah, if your dad did it, you have to pay for it. And it's just like, oof, that's so harsh.
Yes. So Kern asks Worf if he could be Worf's Chadich, which I assume is his second, should the need for combat arise. And suddenly we're on this. They said, the nearest planet that's a part of the Klingon Empire. So they walk onto this planet and Worf is wearing what I can only describe as a sleeveless duster that goes all the way to the floor, like a vest that goes to the floor. But he's got his Starfleet uniform on underneath. And I was like, you couldn't have changed into something a little bit different. Like, I feel like Starfleet has a tenuous piece with the Klingons. Walking into the High Council with your Starfleet uniform on, I feel like maybe he should have changed it to something else.
I didn't really think about it. I didn't really think about it. I feel like they just went as quickly as they could and he threw on the duster and went down. But you're right. He should have changed. And also the Klingons outfits are 1,000 times better than the Federation outfits.
Oh my God. In like every conceivable way.
And Worf looks so cool. Like he had that scene with Kalar where they were both wearing all of the Klingon like outfits. And it was like, oh, they look so dope. So yeah, I agree that I mean, I didn't think about it at the time, but I did notice Kern's outfit when he was patronizing Worf on the bridge. And I was like, oh, his outfit is so cool. I want his whole outfit. So that would have been a nice kind of moment to see Worf really embrace that Klingon part of him in this particular setting where he is defending himself as a Klingon.
Yes. And he keeps saying multiple times in this episode, I am a Klingon. It's like, then maybe you should just dress like one instead of wearing your Starfleet crap.
Not that it would have helped him at all. It just would have been nice for us to see.
It would not have helped because as it turns out, he throws down the challenge in a very dramatic way. Like, I am Worf, son of Moog. I'm here to challenge. And you've got the Klingon High Council, which is none too pleased to see him. And then you've got, I suppose, the like second in command in the High Council.
I think he's just a part of the council, and he's the one who's bringing the accusations.
Oh, that's he's
like
what it is.
Like the accuser.
Okay, that would make more sense. But he rips off Worf's baldric and throws it to the ground. And I was like, ooh, this is not boding well.
And smacks him. And
he
he's
does
like,
smack him.
You're a traitor. You're the son of a traitor. Da, 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 da. You don't even belong. You shouldn't even be here. You're not even Klingon.
Yeah, you
all
should
this
not
crap.
have come.
And Worf is just stands there and takes it, which I thought was so weird. I was like, why is he trying to shank this guy? Which I still don't totally get.
Because there are rules about this type of ceremony, I think. Like, if you are seen as the son of a traitor, you get the smack and you accept the smack. So he was there to challenge it. So he's like, I think what he probably was thinking is like, okay, I am going to prove them wrong. But for now, like, yeah, I'm going to prove them wrong or die. But for now, it makes no sense to like get into a brawl with this dude, which like if tables were reversed, like I would slap him for being the son of a traitor. So we come back to the Enterprise and Picard is asking Data to look into every little bit of information regarding the attack on Kittimer. Even Riker is like, Beverly, I need you to analyze every medical log for any of the like victims that were brought back up from Kittimer at the time of the attack. Give me names. And it's one of those hard searches where you're like, look for any irregularities, no matter how big or small. So it makes it hard to know what you're looking for.
But I appreciate that the whole crew jumped in to help Worf. I really like that.
Would they have ever done anything else? No way.
But it's just still great to see. It's great to see them being like, okay, what can you do? All right, what can you do? What can I do? And they're just really following in Picard's footsteps of saying, I'm not letting you go alone. You could potentially be put to death. I will be standing right next to you. What can I do? I just love the way that they kind of band together. And no one is even, it's kind of like the episode we had where Riker was put on trial and everyone's just like, okay, well, let's just see what happens. Where they're not saying, no, this can't be true. Worf's father would never, because they don't know Worf's father. They don't know if he's going to get off. But what they do say is we're going to do everything in our power to make sure you're not put to death. We don't even care if your father was innocent or guilty, but we're going to do everything in our power to find out whatever we can to try to help, which I really like.
I do like that too. The Klingon High Commander, Kempek, pulls Worf aside a little bit after this to ask him, like, why have you laid down this challenge? Go back to the Enterprise. It wouldn't cost you anything to leave. The challenge will just be like it's kind of like not showing up. It's like, it's like not showing up to like the playground bully, like taunting fight. It's like, it's just going to be forgotten. Like, but of course, Worf can't let that go. He can't.
He said his family would still be disgraced and his father would be disgraced and his name would be disgraced. And it's all about honor. And and Kempek is just like, yeah, but you're not even on Klingon. You're not on a Klingon ship.
It doesn't
you're
matter.
Not on a planet. You are in the Federation. It won't affect you at all if people don't honor your father's name and your name. It won't affect you at all. And he's just like, it's the principle of the matter. And you're like, what else would you expect from Worf?
That's what makes Worf endlessly better than all of these other idiots. Kern is walking down a corridor. That is really cool, by the way. Did you notice that like kind of circular corridor with like the circular doors and like it's just really cool.
It's kind of like that walk through Jeffrey's tube that we saw that one time. It's probably that same set, but just looks cooler.
It could be. Gosh, I don't know. I mean, they redressed it a little bit because it doesn't look like the interior of a ship. But anyway, Duras, who's the asshole who tore the baldric off of Worf, confronts Kern in a corridor. And by the way, Duras is wearing what I might categorize as the most atrocious blackface I've ever seen on an actor. It is so bad.
But again, it's only because of the high def. I'm certain of that. I'm sure that if we were seeing it back in the 90s, it would have looked really good. But he slips Kern a note. Somebody slips Kern a note while Worf is talking to Kempek in the hallway. And he reads the note and he's like, got it. And he sneaks off and then he shows up in this cool hallway. And the note apparently was from Duras saying, hey, buddy, meet me back here. I've got something to say, wink, wink. So he goes back and he's just like, I know who you are. I know that you're the son of Moog. I know that you're brothers with Worf, but I won't tell anybody if you just kind of leave it alone and let him stand alone. Do not join with him. Do not be his chadich. And again, it's like, no, Kern's not going for that either.
Yeah.
Any
Those
more than
sons
Worf
of
was.
Moog are not going. They cannot. Yeah, they're just not going with it. And it starts to really look so fishy because it's like, okay, so Kempek was already asking Worf kind of as a favor to like take off. And now Duras is like, I warn you, don't look into this more, which any investigative journalist would be like, I'm going to look into it even harder now. Right? Like, that's 100% what happens. And so Kern refuses to leave Worf to die alone. And Duras storms out, leaving Kern to be attacked and stabbed by some assassins. And
which, by the way, Duras has the best storm outs. That I did notice in this episode.
His duster, I started calling him the Stormy Klingon before I knew what his name was, because he would turn and like his duster would go like flapping in the wind, which
looked so great.
Didn't we all do that as kids? Have a towel wrapped around like our neck and flap around thinking we were like Superman or something? You need a good flap. He was very flappy. Yes. I'll give Duras credit.
He made me want a duster. The way he would just be like, huh, and turn, and it would just fly behind him. It was like, wow, that looks so cool. I love that you're helping out just so I can see how cool the outfit is.
So these assassins attack Kern and stab him. And we learn a little later he does survive, but barely. And turns out that he was stabbed with this like special assassin's knife that like, where do you even go buy one of those? Like, what section of Amazon are you buying the assassin knife? Because I feel like that would be fairly traceable.
Maybe the same place where you buy the dusters. I don't know.
It's like a kit. They just sell you the whole kit.
It's a Klingon
and they're really
kit.
Shitty like boot covers, you know, like Halloween costumes. You got to wear your regular shoes on, but it kind of covers it. Anyway, so aboard the Enterprise, Riker, Geordi, and Data find that the logs pertaining to the Khitomer attack were covered up in some way. And the Klingon High Council, yes, is clearly trying to cover some shit up.
They're in cahoots.
They are 100% in cahoots. So Worf asks Picard to be his Charich. And Picard, knowing that Kern very nearly died, was like, isn't there anybody else who would be better at this?
But I don't think that it was from fear, though.
No, not at all.
I think it's because he felt like what he said was, there are younger, stronger men. If it's somebody who's going to be watching your back and fighting with you.
Yeah, get Riker.
Or get somebody who's just like young and strong and in the peak of youth. I'm a little bit aged for all this. And Worf's just like, there's no one I'd rather have by my side.
Which is very like, sweet. Yeah. So Picard slips a book under his shirt, protect him from stabbing,
and then
gets his duster out,
which he doesn't do. He should have, but he didn't do that. And gets his duster out. He does show up in a duster pretty soon.
Does.
Or I guess like a robe.
Some sort of sun. It wasn't as cool as Worf's, which was sparkly, but whatever. So Beverly finds that there is one woman who was rescued from Khitomer along with Worf. Her name is Khalest. And Riker finds her, and basically in the middle of like court being in session, essentially in the High Council, Picard goes to the old quarter to find her. And she is, I've never seen an old Klingon woman, and she looks amazing. She looks amazing. She's wearing old lady robes. She's got the gray hair. Her voice is shaky. But when she does turn around, she's got the like exoskeleton spine that all the Klingons have on their uniforms. And I was like, what a freaking phenomenal touch to add that to the robe, because you don't see it from the front. It would be very disarming. It could be any races, like alien races robes, but until you turn around, you're like, this is Klingon. It's so rad.
Yes. And you don't see a lot of old Klingons. And they mentioned this later in the follow-up episode to this episode, that because a lot of Klingons, they're warriors and they die in battle. They usually don't live to become old. So you don't see a lot of gray-haired Klingons ever. But she's kind of in hiding. So she's been living in this really bad neighborhood for like all these years since Worf was discovered. And she just wants nothing to do with it. And she's just kind of living in peace, which really is the same as living in shame, right? She doesn't want anybody to know that she's alive because she's kind of in hiding. And so she says, I died all those years ago. So I can't help you because I'm a ghost. I mean, she's living, but not really.
Yes, she is. She does end up saying that Moog was loyal and that he did suspect that someone was in cahoots with the Romulans and followed them to Khitomer, but she didn't know who the suspect was. She's like, I know he was a good man. I know he was loyal. I can't tell you much more. So Picard is like, all right, I'm not going to like harass you. And upon leaving, he's attacked by two assassins and somehow improbably ends up beating the shit out of one of them and is cornered by another. And when he's cornered, Kayla stabs him in the back.
Kayla throws a knife and hits him in the back. And it was so cool because I agree with you. Inexplicably, how is Picard getting any punches on any of these guys if Kern couldn't?
These guys are like 6'5". Come on,
and they're assassins. I was like, if Kern couldn't take them both down, Picard's not doing anything to anybody.
No.
But somehow he manages to stab one in the gut. The other one just, bear wrestles him and somehow can't just instantly break his arms or whatever. And then you just hear like a huh, and you see his face change and he turns around slowly and you see this knife sticking out of his back and you're like, huh? And then he falls down. Yes. And you see Khalest's hand outstretched from like many feet away. And you're like, oh my gosh, not because I thought she ran up behind him and stabbed him. She didn't even get close. She didn't even need to get close to kill him. I was like, she is the dopest nurse.
Yeah.
She's super old. She probably hasn't killed somebody in a long time. And she just walked out of her door and was like, uh-oh, trouble. Shoop, and threw a knife and just killed the guy. And then they both casually step over the bodies. And Picard's like, so you want to come with me to court? And she's like, okay. I was like, oh my gosh.
So why did she suddenly change her mind? I guess because she said like, you are a strong Chadich. Like, I didn't think that you would be. She said something to the effect of like, I'm surprised that you're as tough as you are, Picard.
Yeah.
But somehow she's like, all right, I guess I'll go to the High Council now and give evidence. So I didn't see that coming.
Yeah. And really, I mean, now the assassins know where she is. And I don't know, maybe there wasn't much hiding much longer from them.
I guess so.
But I think she said something about him fighting with honor or fighting with the spirit of a Klingon or something. And that's really what made her be like, all right, you're not just some Federation lackey. Like I respect you, so I'll come. And then Picard follows up with saying, you don't even have to give testimony. Just your presence alone might be enough to make people nervous and it'll shake the truth loose. So I mean, just come along and be there.
I certainly hope for Picard's sake that he was right because she already said everything she knew. She's like, Moog was loyal. He went to Kittimer to find out who it was, but we don't know who it was. Like, okay, great. Thank you so much for coming in. You have given us basically nothing.
Yes, true. But like Picard was saying, when he and Worf realized that the council was in cahoots, that's why he mentioned like just you being there. They don't know how much you know.
Yeah.
So, and they think you died. So if all of a sudden an eyewitness comes forward, we don't even need to hear their testimony. That could be enough for them to be like, all right.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened.
The jig is up. That's totally what did happen. So Picard rushes in with Khalest, and it turns out that it's actually Duras who the High Council is covering for. Duras's father was the one who transmitted the access codes to the Romulans. But, and this is such a fucking allegory for like the American political system, Duras's family is a powerful dynasty, and it would have caused too much chaos to like wrest this very powerful family out of power. And
it could have caused civil war.
It could have caused a civil
Klingon government.
Yep. It totally could have. And so they chose to blame Moog, thinking that Worf was protected in Starfleet and would never challenge the honor of his father.
And really never find out because nobody was going to tell him.
No,
that his honor had been dismissed.
They were like, we just thought maybe you wouldn't ever hear about this and like, just let it go? ? So what the F, you guys? This to me was so allegorical for the political system we currently live under, which is just so twisted and so corrupt in so many different ways. And you've got these people out here preaching like equality and sharing of power, and we're all the same, and we fight for honor, and we fight for all these right things. But then, all these dirty dealings are happening in back rooms. And it's like, this to me, I was like, in 2021, I was like, well, where have I seen this before? That's what it felt like.
Yeah, that's true. But I will say people who take office and people who serve, I think for the most part are coming from a really good place. And I would say the same for anybody who does a job of service, including police officers, teachers, nurses, doctors, anything like that. People are coming from a place of wanting to serve most people. When you get in that position, though, you are in power over other people. And then if you have kind of like a really dark streak or some psychopathy, once you get in that place of power, it just magnifies that. So even if you've got 10 or 100 or 1,000 people who are doing great work, and you have one person who's like a total psycho and they've got all this power, then you have Hitler, right? It's like it's like not that the whole system is so corrupt because every single person is this twisted, horrible monster. I don't think that, but I do think it only takes a few people to throw a monkey wrench in the system. And that's exactly what we're seeing in this episode, that the whole high command was all up in a tizzy because it was Duras. It was the one person who put them all in this position to be like, crap, we can't challenge this person. So now we have to throw this other person under the bus and hope that the son never finds out and hope that people don't find out that we're lying to everybody. Like now it becomes this whole thing because they don't want to go to war and destroy the government. But it was like that one like linchpin person because of their power and because he was kind of a skeevy dude, clearly. Yeah. His power caused him to amplify that corruption because he was the one talking the most trash about Worf and about his family and about his father being a traitor. He was the one bringing the accusation and he was the one smacking him in front of everybody. And he was the one who was responsible the whole time.
Yeah, he's the one. If we're going with the sons pay for their father's crime, he's the one that's totally responsible. And he knows it. And he knows it. This dude is just an all-around piece of shit. And the High Council would not be torn apart for like Mog's crimes, but it would be torn apart for Duras's father's crime. And Picard, yay, Picard, this was the time to get like high horse Picard and gives this impassioned speech about the Klingons and their honor. And he's right. He's like, you and your honor. And honestly, if the Klingon High Council would be torn apart by that, then I guess it just needs to be torn apart and a new one put in place. That's what I'm very black and white about certain things. I'm like, if you cannot protect the integrity of your governing unit because of some major corruption, then by definition, you should not be in power. And like other people need to be in power. So Picard gives this whole speech. And when Kempek threatens the alliance between the Klingons and the Federation, Picard counters that like the alliance stands on honesty. And when the Federation finds out like why the alliance was destroyed, like they will stand by the truth, which is pretty idealistic, I gotta say.
Which is false because that
we've pretty idealistic
last week with Admiral Halftel. Like the Federation is full of people who are just as jacked up as in the Klingon High Council. There's no special snowflake situation happening with Starfleet. They have a lot of people who are messed up and corruption and all kinds of stuff. Picard himself is very honorable and honest, and there are other people like him, I'm sure, but we see him put in a lot of sticky situations because people over him are just like, who cares? Just get it done, Picard, you know?
Yeah, so, absolutely.
Yeah, no, he would go down in history as like the worst captain in the world if he restarted this war that, so
even for altruistic reasons, it would have been like, so you did what now?
Reasons. Yeah. But I had a good reason. They were making my friend feel, no. They hurt my friend's feelings and then they wanted to kill him. So you started a war between two, no. But anyways, that's what Picard said. And I mean, Kempek didn't know for sure if that was true. Like he doesn't know about this, about Starfleet.
It was a little poker. Mm-hmm. So Worf decides to do something, he said, that will serve the Klingon Empire far greater than his death. He offers to take discommendation, which is essentially exile, in order to protect Kern's true bloodlines and the Klingon Empire. He doesn't give a fuck about Duras. But now that the cat is out of the bag about Kern being Worf's brother, Kern would also be put to death and be made to pay for Mog's transgressions. So Worf says, I will take the discommendation. And then that slimy asshole, as long as Kern is allowed to like live and he's protected. Yeah. So that slimy asshole, Kempek, was like, this might do, or whatever it was he said, where he's like, this would be better. So finally, they kind of come to these terms where it's like, I will take the discommendation. You can all turn your back on me. The truth of the matter will not go outside of this room. Duras stays where he is. His family stays where they are. But Kern gets to like go back to his ship and like no one is the wiser. They're like, all right, fine. And on his way out, Worf backhands Duras for being the son of a traitor and all around scumbag. So I was like, that at least felt like a little bit delicious. So I was like, you had that coming.
He did. And then in that scene when he backhanded him, the camera kind of goes over to Kempek and Kempek's nodding his head in approval, like, yeah, smack him again, Worf. You know, just like, and Duras just looks down at his feet. Right. And you're like, yeah. And it's actually what you pointed out before. Yeah, I guess if you're the son of a traitor, you just take the backhand and you just look down because you are guilty and all that
you are
pride,
shamed. Yeah.
Yeah. All that pride just kind of dissolves from his face, which it did feel nice. And it's nice that Worf was not going to die. And it's nice that Kern was not going to die or that his secret was going to be let out. So it's kind of like, okay.
It was sort of the most win-win you could get out of this. So Kern doesn't want Worf to take the discommendation, but Picard tells Kern very, very wisely there will be another day to fight for this. Live now and fight another day. So everyone in the council chamber turns their back to Worf, and Kurn doesn't want to do it, but Worf tells him he must. Mm-hmm. And that was so sad when he finally crossed his arms and turned his back. I was like, oh, it was just so hard to watch. And then the episode ends when Worf and Picard just silently walk out of the chamber. And it is assumed that that's the end of it. And he goes back to the Enterprise, and Kurn lives. And it sets up a beautiful platform to jump off again and again and again with this Moog betrayal episode, because now we know the truth, although the rest of the Klingons don't know. We know that Worf is not dishonored. And that's where the episode ends. I just, oh my God, I felt like this would have been a really phenomenal two-parter, where that would have been the end of like episode 1, but then it comes back with some whatever. But I guess it does kind of open that up so like they can explore it other places.
They do. They bring it back in a lot of interesting ways. And it's actually, you're right. I would have expected this to be a two-parter because that's usually how they do it on the show. But yeah, probably when they wrote this, they weren't anticipating doing follow-up storylines to it. They didn't plan on it being an arc, but it turns into an arc. And they have lots of different episodes where they touch back on it, where Klingons will be aboard the ship and they refuse to talk to Worf because he doesn't exist. And so, in their culture anymore. And then it causes tension, or, going back to Kittimer and finding out what really happened there. Like it sets up a nice, like you said, jumping off point to give us a lot more stories coming down the road that are really interesting. So it's a nice, I thought it was a really nice ending. You're just kind of like, oh, it's over. Oh, they lost,
wow. Yeah.
It was good. Yeah.
It was really good. Do you have any final thoughts on this episode before we wrap up?
Yeah, I do. And it's something we mentioned before at the very beginning is I feel like this episode was really, really good because it showed how Klingons are more three-dimensional, and it really, really showed their appreciation of honor in more facets. It wasn't just like the honor, the glory, but like it literally showed what honor looks like. It looks like Kurn finding Worf and saying, you're my older brother, so I'm going to honor you by you allowing you to take the challenge. And, you would honor me if I can be your second. Right. Yes. And it's Worf saying, I'm going to honor my father by challenging this accusation. And it's about Worf honoring the Klingons by saying, I'm going to take the rap for this, even though I know I'm not guilty, because I want my culture to survive. I don't want to plunge the entire, I don't want to plunge all of the Klingons into civil war, because the Klingon Empire is actually made up of a bunch of houses. Like that's how it's run. And so if any one house splinters from the other houses, it just becomes a huge mess.
Yeah.
So, I think this was really about honor, and then showing the High Council that did not have honor and that was not valuing honor. And Duras, who was just like a lying little scumbag. It just really highlighted. Yeah, it just really highlighted honor or lack thereof amongst the Klingons. And I really appreciated that. What about you?
Yeah. Well, I just thought, oh my God, this was such a great episode. It really gave me a better appreciation for the Klingon episodes. But again, as I said before, I don't love the Klingon episodes that just talk about Klingon cultures and value, because I don't find that particularly interesting. But the backstory and the depth, and there have always been shades of kind of like shame that Worf is seemingly the only Klingon in the universe who has left Klingon to serve aboard a different vessel and to serve with a different race of people. And everybody sort of like derides him for that. And as we see more and more throughout the series, the word spreads that Worf's father is a traitor. So when other Klingons show up aboard the Enterprise or interact with the Enterprise in any way later on, they're like, we don't even want to be in the same room as him. And you just know how fucking unfair that is. Cause it's like, he didn't even deserve it. Oh, like it's one of those wonderful pieces of writing where the audience is in on the information that other characters are not in on. And you just are so rooting for Worf. And so it really, really made me enjoy this so much. And this being like practically a new episode for me, or maybe a completely new episode, was really enjoyable. I loved watching it. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I did not expect the ending that we got. I really did not.
What did you think was going to happen at the end? I'm so curious. Or what did you hope would happen?
I had hoped that maybe they would just be like, no, he didn't betray his people on Kittimer. And the Enterprise has found this like secret log to show that he didn't. So he's exonerated. I didn't think that it would be like, oh, it was Duras's father and the High Council knew about it and they were covering up for it and they were trying to get Worf to go away. It's like there were so many different betrayals on so many levels.
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, oof, like the whole time watching it was like another wound. It was really brutal. Really brutal, but great writing. Love seeing Picard and company like step up to like aid Worf. That all around it was a great episode. I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, and it also reminds me of when Michael Dorn joined Clubhouse, who's the actor who plays Worf, and you pointed out that his handle is Son of Moog.
Yeah,
which I just thought was so great.
Yes. So on Clubhouse, it has your name, your first and last name, and then you can have a handle. Yes, and his was Michael Dorn at Son of Moog. I was like,
so great.
Great.
Andrea told me that, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I love this, right? That is a title right there.
That was really, really cool. That was a nice little Easter egg. All right, next week we are talking season 3, episode 18, Allegiance. Thank you guys so much for hanging with us, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
Bye. Thanks for geeking out with us. Be sure to join the crew at thetngpodcast.com to be the first to know when we do our live shows or host events exclusively for our members. We'll see you next time.